Hey everyone, welcome to Rev Trev NFL, and I'm pumped about today because today not only do I have a special guest, but we are answering this question: Can the Kansas City Chiefs three-peat? That's what we're talking about. I want to introduce my friend, and I got to flip these around. Peter Day, welcome to the channel, Peter. How are you doing tonight?
Dude, I'm doing amazing. It's kind of a weird thing for me because what we're going to be talking about tonight actually hurts my guts. I've been a lifelong Charger fan, and we're going to talk about whether the Chiefs can, but we're going to keep this on the NFL. We're going to keep this real tonight.
And you know what? And full disclosure, as I put in my TikTok video today, I'm not a Chiefs fan either. A friend of mine bought me this hat, and it just fits with the video that we're going to be doing. And so
I couldn't bring myself to put it on, man. I couldn't put on the red. I love you. I love you. We're going to talk real.
Right. 2021, we were in SoFi Stadium. The picture below is literally, well, I mean, I superimposed us behind that, but that picture is from my camera at SoFi Stadium. We went to the game, and it went to overtime, right?
It did. Kelsey. It broke my heart.
Yeah, Kelsey scores in overtime. They considered that the second best game of the year. The only better game was Buffalo beating the Chargers, Buffalo beating the Chiefs.
That's right.
In that insane playoff game. So we were at one of the best games of the year, and it was, even though your team lost, it was awesome.
We said it was a great game, so it is what it is.
Yeah. So the big question is can the Kansas City Chiefs three-peat? And that is just wild to think about. Like, we're actually having this conversation because Pat Mahomes, and when asked about it, he said this: it's legendary when he was referring to the three-peat. No one has ever done it. Only 8 teams have done it back to back. Can you guess which any of the 8 teams?
Well, you know what I think. I think I can take a shot at a bunch of them actually. But what's really amazing about what Mahomes says is it's really true, because when you think of the teams that we talk about, you talk about like back in the early NFL days, and then you talk about the Raiders, you talk about the Terry Bradshaw Steelers, you talk about Joe Montana and Jerry Wright or Steve Young with the 49ers, you talk about Aikman and the Cowboys, you're talking about a couple of good Packer teams in there, as I know you like that. And then, of course, you're talking about New England, and none of those teams in anything that they did could three-peat. You think of the stars they had on those teams, none of those guys could three-peat. So that's a big feat in the NFL for sure.
Yeah, and what's wild about the 8 teams, so you named them, like it went Green Bay, Miami, Steelers. The Steelers had shot twice. So in 74, 75, they won back-to-back championships. And then 78 and 79. Like, what a decade, right?
Yeah. Oh,
4 championships, like almost three-peated twice. That is insane. And then that, like you said, that 49ers team, the Cowboys team, the Broncos team, the I thought for sure the New England Patriots had three-peated, but apparently not.
I think, did they do 3 and 4 or 3 and 5?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah.
Sure. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. When he says that, it actually would be amazing. In fact, with them repeating just a couple of weeks ago or last week, it's actually the first time that it happened in 19 years. So the Patriots were the last team to do it, I believe, in the 2004, 2005 season or something like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's been wild.
Even the double is really rare these days.
Yeah. 2003, 2004. I mean, it's been a while. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think it's absolutely incredible that we're even having the conversation. It just shows how good this team is. And I mean, it's frustrating, of course, for you being a divisional rival, seeing this team like literally have a dynasty in front of your eyes, and you guys have been very close to beating them year after year.
I think that's what's really important to understand about the Chiefs is the championship pedigree that they come with. So you have, first of all, you have a Hall of Fame coach. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to be a first ballot guy. And then you have a guy like Mahomes. And for those people who kind of live on the East Coast or watch East Coast teams all the time, they see some of Kansas City, but because they're in the West, we see a lot more of their play. And what you have to understand is this team is never down and out. It's like like the great teams that you never think that it's finished. So when they play against the Chargers and the Raiders and all that stuff, if they're down in the game, like they were throughout the playoffs, they trailed in their games in the playoffs, but they're never out because he just needs a drive, right? So the guy was licking his chops when San Francisco scored the field goal in overtime, going, "This is what we play for, man. This is what we play for. I get one chance to score a touchdown to win the Super Bowl." You were 8, 9, 10, 12 years old. That's exactly what you were saying on the playground. And that's what Mahomes is. He's a playground quarterback. He scrambles. He does everything he needs to do to win. And there's a difference between a combine statistical quarterback and a winner. The dude's a like, let's just be totally. Where do you put that at a combine? Combine's in a couple of weeks. Where do we put that? The guy's just a winner.
Well, and that's why, people were pretty high on Burrow.
Yeah,
I still think he's one of those guys. Yeah. And now he has to dethrone Mahomes to do it. But man, he's been a winner at every level. And it's just like, you're just looking at him. He's like, he looks like a stone cold killer out there on the field, but he's got to be. I mean, they came close, but they didn't do it. And it takes a lot of gonads to win a Super Bowl.
Oh, dude.
And a lot of health on a team too, right? And coaching, defense, the whole thing.
And as you talk about a player like Mahomes, and then we bring up Joe Burrow, the other thing that you have to also throw in there is the first thing that they're going to need to repeat or to three-peat. Mahomes has to stay healthy. We don't even talk about that part, right? You talk about a guy like Burrow. Well, Burrow hasn't lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs. And so you go, but if he's not there, they're not beating the Chiefs. There's no chance they're beating. And so if Mahomes isn't there, the three-peat kind of goes down the drain. Let's just go there. But he's been great for health, for sure.
And you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have this defense, you're not winning jack squat. And if we're honest, that defense he played against the 49ers was phenomenal, but nobody was talking about the Chiefs defense that was even better. In fact, the 49ers were ranked number 4 coming into the playoffs, and everyone's like, yeah, they're elite. Well, Kansas City was number 2, and we saw them at the Super Bowl. Like, there's a reason why they're number 2, but it was weird that nobody was talking about them. And, Mahomes plus a defense, a top 3 defense. Are you kidding me? That's a recipe for championships. I'm just saying. If Rodgers had those defenses, I'm just saying.
Right. Oh, geez. You know what's really interesting, and again, I think it goes into the pedigree, the championship. San Francisco through the season averaged about 330 yards, I believe, to opposing offenses in stopping. In the playoffs, however, they went all the way up to 409 average yards, where Kansas City did exactly the opposite. They actually went down 58 yards in the number of yards they were allowing in the playoffs versus what they were allowing in this season. So it's like those teams where they get into the playoffs and now it's on, right? Like we got here, now it's on. And so when the defense gets tighter, like Kansas City's did, and San Francisco kind of loosens up and they're a little bit weak in the corners, you kind of play right into a guy like Andy Reid, who is an offensive genius, right?
Absolutely. Just a reminder, everyone, if to follow RevTrev NFL on X, which is Twitter, on YouTube, now on TikTok as well, and Facebook. I'd really appreciate it. Peter, we have people, I know this is going to shock you, we have people watching this right now, and they've made comments, so I want to just dive into their comments. I know that you and I have a number of things we want to talk about. But maybe we'll just grab some of those comments first. We really appreciate them being here. So Jason says the Packers are the last team to three-peat. No, Jason, they are not. Oh, I guess if we're talking like before Super Bowls, maybe. But we're only talking Super Bowls. So good point, Jason. Thank you for bringing up the super long past. And then Andy says, and he's my friend who is NFL Outdated. I do the NFC North Freezing 4 podcast with him. We do a Lions fan, a Bears fan, a Packers fan, and a Vikings. Did I say that? So does an awesome job. People, if you haven't subscribed to NFL Outdated, please do. He asked this question, Peter. Do some of their free agents sign for team-friendly deals to chase the three-peat?
Yeah, I heard Chris Jones say yesterday that he was going to do whatever needed to happen to be able to sign with them again. And understanding that hopefully players in this day and age, because Chris Jones knows that he could go somewhere and he's going to make some bank. There's no two ways about that. But do you want to be part of history and still make your money? So between him and L'Jarius Sneed, those are the keys. The rest of it, it kind of brings up some interesting stuff because those two players on that defense are going to be super important moving forward. But the Chiefs are notorious for being able to draft well late in drafts. So you think about the draft picks that they've had through the last 5 years kind of thing, they've always finished, and they're not getting any higher a draft pick than 26, 27, 28, right, and quite often into the 30s and 32 now, right? So they end up being able to draft well. And I think that you're going to get those two players locked up for sure. And if that means that they do something like, do you work it back with Mahomes a little bit and go, hey, we can restructure a little bit just to hold on to Chris Jones? I think that if you say that to Patrick Mahomes, I think he sort of thinks about it and sort of says, well, we're going to perform it anyway. I think that it's a really smart move for them. I think that they've got a lot of young talent. They don't need to worry about Rashee Rice. They don't need to worry about Pacheco. They're still going to be on rookie contracts, so you're not going to pay them a ton of money. But I think you need to lock up Chris Jones, and I think that you need to lock up Sneed for sure.
Yeah, and especially those two guys are key to that defense. You're right. They can go get more money, but they also can lose, and they won't be in the big games. So, I mean, you can go play for Cleveland, or you can go play for Houston. Well, Houston's bad, but whoever the other teams are that are garbage now. The Bears, Andy, since you're a Bears fan, I'll just put that down there. No, but they're getting better as well, right? So I think that's the key. And if someone said, do you think they're going to re-sign Nick Bosa? The answer is yes. They're going to re-sign Chris Jones. So, and then the next question is, and from Big Ben, if the Chiefs can lose Tyreek Hill, then immediately win a championship, and actually two championships back to back, then I'd say that they repeat. I think that's a really good, that's something that you and I haven't brought up yet.
Yeah.
They just went back to back without Tyreek Hill.
Right. Well, I think that the interesting thing is, and you and I've talked about this before, when you're talking about those great teams. So I mean, I'll just zipping through stuff. If you're talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're talking Bradshaw had like Lynn Swann out there. He's a star and a Hall of Famer. And then you're talking into the Joe Montana with the Jerry Rice kind of thing. You're talking about Michael Irvin playing with Aikman. You're talking about the only one that kind of doesn't fit the mold is Tom Brady in New England. He did have Randy Moss at some point, but he really had some no-name wide receivers similar to Mahomes, and it didn't change his championship pedigree. So the same thing with running back. He didn't have that stud running back that you think of like when you think of those championship teams. They had like these stars on it. This is a team that they continually turn over and somehow still pull out the talent. So losing a guy like Tyreek Hill, of course you think that you're going to do that. But then if they start playing on the interior of the defense, and you have a guy like Kelsey, and then Kelsey almost got used this season, it seemed more like a decoy. Like he kind of was just there drawing defenses. And I mean, we're not even talking about the number of drop passes that Kansas City receivers had this year. I mean, it was ludicrous. I wish I could remember the stat that I heard, but they were talking about like 3 passes a game of wide open drops on an average from the Kansas City Chief receivers. So Rice did pick it up and he came back, and I think he's actually a guy that could replace a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster as like the guy maybe, but then it doesn't make the Tyreek Hill loss nearly as bad.
Yeah. Jason also posted, I'd love for the Packers to sign Chris Jones in free agency. Wouldn't we all? Team him up with Kenny Clark, talk about stopping the run. Yeah, I think we're in dreamland, but I'm with you. I'm dreaming the same thing. And then Andy, of course, as a Bears fan, says Packers never sign impact free agents except for Reggie White. So there we go. Reggie White was pretty good, just saying. And ouch. Oh, he heard the Bears comment. So the other thing he said is, only thing I would worry about is the wear and tear on players from playing games so late into the year. But anytime you have Mahomes and Kelsey, I would bet they have the best chance. I think that's a good comment.
You know what's really wonderful about them as well. Again, they show up so well late in the draft, and they're getting impact players. So you talk about all the receivers this past year in 2023 draft that went before Rashee Rice. I believe he went at 55 or 56, so fairly late in the second round. And he's an impact player for them right now. And then you talk about in the 7th round, they pick up Pacheco. Like this guy runs with, this guy's angry at the world. I watch him and he's on the ground, literally his elbows are down and the knees are still pumping. This guy is, so they found this thing in the 7th round that only, and so you get a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who, they were thinking was going to be this guy. He's disposable. He really is. So they've got a lot of cheap pieces there that are impactful for their team. So I think that's probably the greatest thing. I think they actually, in the end, by the time everything's said and done, they can sign a free agent or two. A name that comes to mind, and I don't think that Cincinnati lets them get away, but you have a guy like T. Higgins in Cincinnati who's a free agent, and you go, can you imagine if Juju's gone and T. Higgins steps into that group sort of thing? So I think they're going to have the money to be able to do it. I think Chris Jones is going to agree to terms that are suitable for the team. And I hope so for his sake anyway, because that kind of makes him a Hall of Famer in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'd say he's on the fence right now.
That's a great point, because we do talk about Mahomes and Kelsey and Chris Jones, and rightfully so. We talk a fair bit about Andy Reid being, and I think the Philadelphia Eagles made a huge mistake, but I mean, they won a Super Bowl without him. But still, the point being is like, he is just a winner. And then they had the support staff. That's what people don't talk about.
Yeah.
But you just brought up, they draft unbelievably. It's not even free agencies. It's drafting in late rounds. Like, so what is it? Where's the weakness? And like, how many teams would kill for this? I mean, hypothetically kill right now.
Well, yeah. And it's really, what's really important in the end, and the game, free agency isn't the game. Free agency should be the supplement to the game. The game is about acquiring picks. Right. So you want to have picks, you want to have them rolling all the time. You want to be getting compensation for players that you're trading and such. And if you're using those picks, because you're talking about, before the draft, you're thinking that next year the San Francisco 49ers are going to have to put into their game plan defensively this guy that they're about to pick in the 7th round. I mean, everybody goes, come on, that's ridiculous. That's, come on. There's 20 backs taken before that. So that part for me is where they really seem to succeed, is taking those late round picks, doing fine with a very late 1st round pick, and people don't seem to put any value. Everybody's going, hey, they got a top 10 pick. Well, how many top 10 picks have worked out as well as some of those late round picks have for the good team? So you're talking a team that's really classic for that is Baltimore, and Baltimore always has picks coming around. and they've always got a lineup of picks rolling over and over and over. And that's what they've done, is they've built their team on those picks, and then they subsidize with players coming in. They bring in linebackers like Smith, and they bring in pieces that are super important to completing that picture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's where they are. They're in the same sort of boat. They don't have a name brand running back, so to speak, and even at wide receiver. And yet there's a team right there that can they win the big one? Well, we won't. That's another podcast.
So Jason did say the Raiders and Chargers are on the rise in the AFC West, and they are coming for Kansas City for the division.
Don't get me started, man. Don't get me started.
I do think it's an important piece because, for example, Max Crosby said, we want to be the ones that dethrone the Chargers. The problem is the Raiders don't have a quarterback. The Chargers, on the other hand, do.
Yeah.
And now this year, for some reason, I mean, you guys had a horrific line of injuries.
You mean they wanted to dethrone the Chiefs or the Chargers? Sorry,
you said they wanted to dethrone the Chiefs. I apologize.
Yes.
So the until the Raiders get a quarterback, I don't think it's realistic there. Yeah. But where the Chargers, because of all the injuries, like I thought they had a chance to do it this year, but they just were pummeled by injuries. And then the defense was just really shockingly bad. And then Staley was awful and then got fired. Yeah. So now that's changed. I mean, you can talk about Harbaugh now, right? Like, are you kidding me? Right? You landed Harbaugh? Like,
with the addition for us, honestly, of Harbaugh and Ortiz as our general manager, who came from Baltimore as player personnel guy, absolutely. You're talking about a toughness that this team hasn't sort of had an identity for. So that really changes the dynamic. How quickly that happens, how we do through that process. They've got to get rid of some contracts as well. I'm sure that there's going to be 2 big names that are going to go. But then, the other side of that is who we didn't mention. Sean Payton had the Denver Broncos playing great ball, like last 8-9 weeks of the season. They were one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and nobody sort of picked it because they started out, with some ridiculous 1-5 record or 2-6 or something like that. So no one was really seeing that part, but they were actually up and coming, challenging for a playoff spot right at the end of the season. So it's a tough division, and they all play the Chiefs really strongly. But somehow the Chiefs, you and I've been, at least 3 games in Los Angeles or San Diego. And we're always ahead. We're always ready to play. And somehow there's just this, it's like the Yankees and Red Sox. There's just that the hurdles. I think teams, the pedigree plays. And so it's difficult to see it happen. In order to do this 3-peat scenario, I believe they have to win their division, and that means that they beat the Chargers. So it's an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I think. And here's the other one that's super interesting: is the Kansas City Chiefs were underdogs.
Yeah.
What?
Crazy? Yes,
they just won the Super Bowl. I mean, I know they struggled during the year, but does that baffle you as well?
It does, and I thought it was super important. And I think that before, when you don't think like a player like Mahomes or Kelsey or those kind of championship type, like Brady would be the same way, those kind of different players, Jordan would have been the same way. When you talk about them, he didn't talk about it beforehand, really. He sort of touched on it a little bit, but he didn't really say anything until after the game was over and he's with Jim Nantz on the stand receiving the Vince Lombardi trophy. And he asks him what he thinks. And he says, the Kansas City Chiefs have been underdogs for the last 3 playoff games. And he said, just remember, the Kansas City Chiefs are never underdogs. Right. And I think that piece, so he didn't do it, but a guy like those types of players use that stuff as motivation. Like, that's like, hey, you want to call us that? that just makes me mad. Now I'm going to come. And I think that that's really huge. You see that in him, and I think that that's why he scores a game-winning drive in overtime against a significant defense.
And it's wild, man. It's
Yeah.
absolutely wild. So, okay, let's talk about that really quickly. The Chiefs beat everybody good. Is this the best Super Bowl run we've ever seen? Now, so let's just talk about it. The Dolphins, right?
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills, and then who most people were picking to win the Super Bowl because they had beat the 49ers, the Ravens.
Yeah.
And then they go in and beat the best team from the NFC in the 49ers. Like, is this the greatest like path to a Super Bowl we've ever seen? Because they didn't play anybody weak.
You know, what's really interesting is in all of the winning that Mahomes and the Chiefs have done, until this year, they had never played a game on the road other than the Super Bowl itself. He had never had to do that. And so he went into two very difficult situations. So you're going to go into Buffalo in
Right.
pretty tough conditions. And then you're going to go into the home of the new number one seed in the AFC, and you got to win there too. So you're not doing it winning all your home games like they've done in the past. You're doing it going, hey, we're going to come to your place and beat you down. That might qualify. That might be up there as, because when the New England Patriots were doing it, they won a lot of home games because they were ranked so high as a 1 or a 2 seed going into each playoff sort of season. And the Chiefs have done it until this year too. But coming in that spot, it's like, okay, we have two huge, and you didn't go into Houston and win. You went into Buffalo and won, and you went into Baltimore and won. So it presents a pretty good argument. I think the only situation that's harder than that might be Lambeau. It might be going into Lambeau in January. Maybe that's a tougher field to play on away from home, but they'd be used to that because they play in Kansas City and they play in those conditions. It's not nearly the same.
So I'm going to crown them that this is the best Super Bowl run we've ever seen. Because it just all those things all together, and they didn't have a great regular season. They had a good regular season, but they didn't have a great one like they had in not having the home field advantage. By the way, was it 5 AFC championships in a row or 6? Like whatever it was, I think it was 5, but 5 is insane. And so like this team is, and a lot of people are like, you guys are just like, we just got to give them credit. I'm not a Kansas City fan. I know it looks like I am,
Yes,
but I'm there. And I don't know, like Peter, you and I have talked about NFL for decades, honestly, for decades now.
Yep.
And how many times did I bet against Brady and I was wrong? How many times? Like a lot, right? Yep. And I was just sick and tired of watching him win. Meanwhile, he, the 6th round pick turns into the GOAT. And you're like, are you kidding me? The guy who's not mobile, throwing 50 plus touchdowns, winning 7 Super Bowls. Like, are you kidding me? So I think after all these years of being wrong, I mean, sometimes I picked them to win and they won, but I was always pick against them and Brady and the Patriots. And even when the Buccaneers went, I thought my Packers should have beat them. But anyways, the point being is I bring it back to Kansas City saying, I've learned my lessons. I am no longer picking against Patrick Mahomes until he proves me wrong. I picked against them. Like, dude, if you saw my prediction videos, I almost nailed everything this year. Yeah. In the champ or divisional round, I picked Buffalo to beat Kansas City.
Except for the Packers.
No, I was right on them.
Oh, you're good. Okay.
Yeah, no, in the playoffs, I was right. I said that we were going to lose to the 49ers, but I think I picked them to beat Dallas, which is wild.
Yeah.
I didn't think they were going to dominate Dallas. But anyways, the point being, I'm no longer picking against Mahomes until he proves me wrong. I think like anything time now, like what's going to happen? I'm picking Mahomes. I'm picking Mahomes. I mean, he's not going to win every single year, but you better like 85% chance of winning compared to who knows.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's the same thing. When you're talking again with those types of generational players, I mean, you're not intelligent in a football sense to bet against Tom Brady when he was playing. No one wanted to see the Patriots win. We were sick and tired of the Patriots winning. It was more like a machine that they'd grown, rather than an entertaining style of football. They just tore you apart all the time. And the same thing, like a Joe Montana for football, like Jordan, right? So Jordan comes back, and I remember him, deathly ill against Utah in their last. He was like, guy looked like he wanted to crawl over and die. It's like, of course, people in Vegas are going to bet against him, but this is Jordan. His will to win is bigger than our ability to guess and bet. So it's like if you don't understand the way that the man thinks, he takes it personally to lose. He hates losing more than he likes winning, and so those kinds of people, they're special. Like players don't. I'm sure Mahomes has a great relationship with a lot of the players in the team. I'm sure they're all buddies and stuff, but those great players are also difficult to play with because the expectation is super, super high. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So people want to taint it. Okay. And there's literally people asking this question. And I want to ask you this question. Do you believe that the NFL's rigged? Because the conspiracy theories of people is like, it's already planned. Everyone knows who's already going to win. It's scripted. What is it when you hear that? What do you think? And do you believe that the NFL is rigged?
I think the people that have the time on their hands to ask a question like if the NFL is rigged should either get a job or get out of their mom's basement. No. There's too much involved. In order for the league to be successful, they have to have more than one or two successful franchises. Everybody's got to be successful. I'm sure the league more than anything wants a team like Carolina and Houston, as we saw this past year, be super successful in what they're doing. Because it sells tickets, it sells paraphernalia, it sells all that stuff. So as a business, even just as a business in and of itself, they want to make money in Houston. They want to make money in Los Angeles. They want to make money, which they're not. They want to make money everywhere that they go. So it would be silly to think that it might be rigged.
I'm there too. But I understand that there's a lot of video footage showing that the refs kind of favored the Chiefs during the season, and then they saw in the Super Bowl, well, this was a hold and blah blah blah. I know that John Madden would say that there's holding on every single play. So if you really want to have a microscope, you can find that. Yeah. Now, granted, I do believe there are some things that go on. You're like, that just looks weird. I just can't imagine saying, I'm sorry, McCaffrey or Nick Bosa, you're not going to win. We've scripted that you're going to they could care less what the conspiracy theorists are saying. They have worked their entire lives for this moment. Yep. And so you telling me that they're going to, sorry, it's scripted. You're going to lose it within the last couple seconds or in overtime. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah, we're still getting over the fact that the WWE is scripted. So I think the NFL's safe.
Have you seen that? I don't even know which wrestler it was, but the guy comes up and they're in the hallway of a stadium, and the guy goes, "Is this real or is it fake?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Is it real or is it fake?" And he goes, "Because I believe it's fake." The wrestler gets mad and slaps him across the face. And he's like, "Does that feel fake to you?" And the guy's like, he's a pencil, dude. He is beautiful. Nothing. He's just beautiful. A reporter, trying to act all tough, and they just smoked him, literally full hand, wham, knocked him out. And then he starts swearing at the reporter, and then people have to separate them. And I was like, whoa, I'm glad I wasn't one.
Note to self: question not to ask a player or a person filled with about 3 or 4 pounds of Adderall right now.
Now, I'm not saying that it's real. I'm just saying that, their bodies go through punishment, but that you're right. This is not, the NFL's not WWE. Yeah. Right. So that's hilarious. So you and I are on the same page on that one, but I think it's just that people get salty and say, we're tired of seeing them win. And we're seeing some favorable calls go their way more often than not. And then they start. But I mean, COVID really helped us with the conspiracy theories too, right? So
yeah, yikes. I don't subscribe to officiating being an issue. As a fan, You're always frustrated if a call goes against you. But in the end, if you weigh it out, if you took a player, any player in any sport that went to a high level, if you said every game that they ever played at the amateur level into college, into the professional league of whatever their choice is, if you counted the calls that went for you and against you through that whole process, it's probably pretty even. Like there's never a time where you go, hey, every call went against this team and every call went for this team. It doesn't ever work that way. Some games it might, some quarters it might, whatever. Sometimes in really tough moments, it makes it seem elevated, but it's really the same call they made in the first quarter. It just didn't mean as much as when they were on the 10-yard line in the fourth. So you all of a sudden the call is that much worse. That's just fans who don't know a ton about the game, maybe.
Yeah. So this leads us to our next question, because if it's not rigged, then what do you know why the 49ers lost the Super Bowl? I want to ask you, why do you think the 49ers couldn't win the Super Bowl? If it's not rigged, if there's not a script, what is it about the 49ers? Like, they had a very, very good team, and Purdy played pretty good. Like, that was, everyone was worried the most about his play. I think he played well enough to win. Why do you think the 49ers lost the Super Bowl?
Well, what I would say, and fortunately, there's been some fact to sort of back up what I'm going to say right now. The 49ers yesterday fired their defensive coordinator. So they went through the league being a top 3 defense, a top 4 defense all season long, closer to 2 and 3. And then they literally went to the Super Bowl. But through the playoffs, their defensive structure broke down and they ended up allowing, as we were saying earlier, way more yards. So you went as a defensive coordinator to the Super Bowl with a team that players or fans and analysts and sports writers would say is one of the better defenses in the NFL, and you lose your job. So I think that it had a lot more to do with interior stuff and giving up those extra 60 or 70 yards that we were talking about in the playoff matches that they played to that point. I honestly think that I really like Brock Purdy. I think that he makes really good decisions. He actually reminds me in his process. He doesn't have as good a feet as Joe Montana, but he reminds me of the same type of quarterback. Montana didn't have a bomb of an arm. He didn't have all this arm talent that all these scouts talk about. But he played the game and he was really smart with the game, and that's what I see Purdy doing. My concern with the 49ers is how long can they keep those players under contract that are their stars? Because you had a healthy group of receivers. You have potentially and arguably, and I would argue this with anybody, the best running back in the NFL as far as everything from between the tackles to the screen passes and the passing. I mean, the kid is, if he gets 100 receptions, no one's surprised. And then you have that defense, and you have a guy like Trent Williams as a tackle. It's like, okay, well, what could we upgrade in this thing? Now, their corners, they need some help. I would say that, and probably midway through the season. I think the defense broke down at the wrong time, and it would be evidenced by a defensive coordinator, unfortunately, losing his job, because he's a really good defensive coordinator, and he's going to get a little bit pooched right now because most of the defensive coordinator jobs are taken that had vacancies in them. So unfortunately, I think, ironically, I think it was the defense that lost the 49ers the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's something that's food for thought for sure. My answer to this question is someone who you've just mentioned. I think they lost the Super Bowl because in the third quarter they stopped running the ball to McCaffrey.
Mm-hmm.
Why in the world would you stop doing that? Like you said, and I agree with you, he is the best running back in the NFL. And I actually don't even think it's close, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
He's back and he's healthy, and that O-line's insane.
Yeah.
And the pass catching. Why in the world would you not run the ball in the third quarter? Like, what about it is like, And I get it. Deebo Samuel's is amazing. I get that Kittle's a stud. I get that Ayuk's amazing as well. I love that Jenkins was playing pretty good ball as well and scoring touchdowns. And I have no, I'm not criticizing them. But when you have this guy on your team who's never been to a Super Bowl, who's hungry, and that flea flicker thing that they did, whatever that trick play was, how that didn't get picked off, and then all of a sudden it's like you've got McCaffrey by himself. It's like it's over. That's a touchdown.
Open field. I think that could be said as well. Is that the usage of McCaffrey? I wish I remembered this stat, but did Kittle have just one catch or two catches in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, that's the wild part. I'll bring it up while we're talking here.
But so you're talking about a guy, and even if he's not going to run between the tackles, if you say bringing McCaffrey out into the flat, into the open field, that guy he makes ankles snap. Why we're not sort of sliding him out there. Then if you do that, that actually opens up the middle of the field for a guy like Kittle and Kelsey and stuff like that. So as you're doing those things, Pacheco actually makes Kelsey successful in the sense that he can do that. Like the running game does that. It always opens up the passing game. They didn't really take advantage of any of that. And you have a guy who is probably a top 3 or 4 tight end in the NFL and probably the best running back. And I don't know if in a championship game you utilize them to the best of their abilities.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
So Kittle, 2 receptions for 4 yards. Are you kidding me?
Oy.
That's awful.
Yeah.
That's awful. I mean, granted, Samuel, 3 catches for 33 yards. McCaffrey, 8 catches for 80 and a touchdown. Like, that is wild.
Yeah.
That has to go under this heading of you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
this got to be one of the reasons why they're failing. Like, that's awful.
Well, it almost added up as defensive coordinator against defensive coordinator, because it was a battle, right? You're talking about a Super Bowl that wasn't a very, until the fourth quarter, it wasn't a very well played, 19-12 game, that sort of that choppy type of, it was pretty ugly for three quarters. Like if you didn't catch which I didn't, part of the first half, if you didn't, it didn't really hurt you. Like, it was like, that wasn't the part of the game. It was ugly football to watch, but a defensive sort of struggle. Like, the defensive players and coordinators and all that stuff were thinking this was amazing, because it was just like, they're just punching each other in the teeth. And it's not entertaining football, but it's a defensive coordinator's dream, right?
Yeah, and that's why the defense wins championships pedigree is true.
Yes.
Okay, Pete, so here's the other thing. So you talked about Pacheco, right? Yeah. And he runs, like, I always think he gallops like a horse. That's the way when I watch him. He's
got high knees for
he's
sure.
Just a mean runner, right? 18 carries, 59 yards. So only 3.28 yards per carry, but tough yards that he was getting. Okay. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing that nobody talks about in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, 9 carries, 66 yards, led his team in carries.
Yeah.
And yards. I mean, not in carries, but in yards. That's insane. That's got to be one of the reasons why they won the Super Bowl.
Well, sure. And that's a reason. That's another reason, why the original question, can they repeat? Like, you think about it, if you start working the field and you have 6 different wide receivers with receptions, and the defense is reacting to that, even if it opens up a 7-yard run out of bounds, that is something where you didn't see. So if you want to talk about a great, like in the recent past of like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, those guys didn't do that. You were never in threat of having Tom Brady run for 80 yards in a game. So with the decision making, with the attitude that he's got, with the accuracy that he's had in the playoffs in particular, a guy like that who can run for 80 to 100 yards in a game, That's a very difficult thing for anybody to contain because you don't have enough players unless you spy out the quarterback with one of your linebackers to be able to stick with that. So you're either going to give up a little bit of your pass rush or you're going to try and give pressure, and you want to try and a guy like Mahomes up the middle, you want the pressure to come. Well, then he's got an escape route. You're not containing. So you're betting on how do we deal with this guy? And then you're hoping that the game plan doesn't look like he ran for 80 or 90. Like like that's rough, right? It's Lamar Jackson. That's his biggest, the best sort of support to his pass game is the fact that you're afraid he's going to run, so you can't keep everybody in coverage because you all want to move up into a box. Well, Mahomes kind of pulled that a little bit and went for his little jaunts. And he always picks really good times to go. And I think that's another piece of the pie.
Yeah. So last question for the night is this. Who do you think will win the Super Bowl in 2025? Now, I understand that it's February. We're 1 week out of winning of a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We have not gone to a combine. The draft has not happened. The free agency hasn't happened. No one's been injured yet. We haven't got to preseason. We haven't even played week 1. Okay. So it's way too early. But who do you think will win the Super Bowl in 2025?
Okay. So is this a heart question or a head question? Because I kind of feel like there's a couple of different
answers. Do both.
Yeah.
Do a heart and do a head pick.
Do you know what? I'll be the first to say on one of your live streams, if they do not deal with an injury to a major player or component of their team, I think that Kansas City just has another year of experience, and they're still the team to chase, especially in the AFC. Baltimore is right there. Buffalo has been there. Like, I mean, those poor Buffalo fans, man, come on. Wow. Like, if you talk about the Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bills back then, and now they've got, Josh Allen there, and everything is so promising, and cannot get over the hump. I mean, it's I think they're amazing. I just don't see it. I don't see them being able to do that. And maybe it's a coaching thing that they just need to sort of take that next step. Anyway, I say it's Kansas City coming out of the AFC for sure. I actually think the Dallas Cowboys are going to challenge next year the San Francisco 49ers for the NFC. I think they should have done it this year with, the Packers went in there and kind of pulled one out of their hat, to be frank. And Dallas looked like they laid an egg at home, which they hadn't done all season. I would say Kansas City is the team. In saying that, I also think that we have the possibility, the Chargers, of winning the division. And if Kansas City goes in there as a wild card, I wouldn't pick them again to win their third championship in a row. But as of right now, unless it's a pretty serious, significant injury to a significant player, I'd say Kansas City is the team to beat.
And so what's your heart?
My heart is I'd love to see San Francisco get over the hump. I'd love to see them be able to hold on to enough players through free agency and have a good draft. I think that Kyle Shanahan's awesome. I think that Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, is unbelievable. I think they have some great pieces in there if you look at that group, and they just haven't been able to complete the task. I'm kind of a Seahawk fan as well, so the 49ers feels a little bit weird to say, but I was a little bit disappointed for them because they have gone out there, and John Lynch, their general manager, has gone out there and gotten the pieces that they need to kind of complete it, like the McCaffrey deals and stuff. They've had a couple grid line. They're not going to be able to hang on to Fred Warner for that much longer. But I'd love to see them be able to sort of put it all together, because I think that it's that good of a team that they deserve a championship.
Yeah. So I think, here we are in February, all signs point for Kansas City to three-peat. I like I said, I'm no longer picking against Mahomes. So I'm with you. I know it's too early, but that's my Super Bowl pick for 2025 right now because I just don't see anything changing. Now, when it comes to heart, just a thing. When it comes to heart, it also has to be factual. And so you had some realistic takes, right? It's like 49ers are there. They should have and could have won that game.
Yeah.
But just a reminder that if the Packers had beaten the 49ers, they had already beaten Detroit in Detroit and beaten Kansas City. Now, granted, that was at Lambeau, but that was it would have been a neutral ground. They had a good shot. So I'm not saying that they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they were there. They were 3 points away from beating the 49ers, and missing the field goal sucked, right? So same thing happened with Detroit. Like Detroit was there too. And, Campbell going and risking it like he had all year backfired on him. So I could see both of those teams there. Also, another team that we're not talking about much in the NFC is that Minnesota was on a tear until Kirk Cousins got injured. But I think he's going to miss a bunch of games. But I don't believe in like the Buccaneers on that side. I could see Buffalo coming over and just like, this is our year. We got to do it now. It's now or never. Those are some of the heart ones where I'm sitting there going. Also, I know I'm basically saying the whole league.
No, you're not. No.
Cincinnati, with a healthy Burrow, might be the guys as well. So if I'm going head, I'm going Kansas City. If I'm going heart, there's a lot of options.
Well, I mean, my heart says the Chargers in the sense that that obviously they've got a certain positions that are Pro Bowl players and that sort of stuff. I think that it's so broken right now with a culture there that they need a couple seasons before they're actually going to contend, if that's the case. So
totally.
Of course, I mean, their record this year, 5-12, is ludicrous. There's none of us that have been Charger fans that say that's possible. They're on the up, they're on the rise, especially with the coaching and GM change. My heart would be, obviously that'd be amazing. I still think we're a couple of years away from that. So I want to sort of just kind of jump into your little, because you're a Packer fan.
And
of course, my heart says
way better than I
that's
thought.
not realism for me.
Right. Yeah. Well, your team was way worse than you thought, and my team was way better than I thought. So we literally had the flip sides. So speaking of which, Jason commented, I think the Packers will win their division and have a first round bye and have home field advantage. I think that matters. You still have to win the NFC Championship. And if we're honest, the 49ers are our kryptonite. So as much as we want to say, that would put us in a better spot, I think until we beat the 49ers, we will not have we have to get Dallas or Detroit or someone else to beat the 49ers for us to be able, they have our number. So
I honestly think, I think that they have a legitimate shot at that. But I think that right now Detroit's becoming, you want to talk about a turnaround. Detroit's becoming the class of that division, and I know that's hard to sort of talk to you about, but that group is, if they have a good draft this year again, that is a contending team. So I could see both of those teams winning next year. It looks like Kirk Cousins is going to sign again with Minnesota, or at least be under some level of contract with them. But both those teams, I don't think the Bears are anywhere near. So I think that with the division that you have, I think that you have as good a shot as any of winning a division next year, as far as the Packers are concerned.
Absolutely. So we have gone 53 minutes on this incredible conversation and topic. And surprisingly, we've landed in the same spot. Actually, we agree actually a lot on our stuff. I mean, sometimes we have quite wide receiver debates are pretty heated. But we'll have to do that again this off season.
Come on.
I just want to let you know, if you have watched this whole thing or you just got to the end and you're like, listen, you need to hit the like and subscribe, because this is the kind of content we pump out. It's interesting. It's not just homer takes. I get that we're talking about the Chargers and the Packers a little bit, but at the end of the day, we're giving credit where it's due.
Yeah.
And so I really want to encourage people to hit that like and subscribe. And I wanted to give a preview of our next one that we're going to film in a couple minutes. And and launch in a day or so. But I want to just show everyone what our conversation is going to be. We want to talk about the NFL draft. And with the first pick, the Chicago Bears select, this is what we're going to be talking about. So make sure you hit that like and subscribe, because that's our next video. And I think we're going to have a great conversation regarding that. And it's going to be the number one conversation happening from now until the draft for sure.
You bet. It'll be an interesting one for sure. There's a lot of options. Let's just say that.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Peter, for coming out today.
Thank you, man.
We'll hit the outro music and all that kind of stuff, but really excited about our next conversation. Thanks so much for being my guest and being such a great co-host. I really appreciate you, and I love chatting football with you.
Yeah, everybody that's watching, be safe out there. Have a great weekend.